Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Most of you know who I am, and for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is KrimsonKreamer, and I play video games, and we are back with another YuGiOh deck build, and today we are doing the Tenyi archetype deck. Now, this deck is a little personal to me, because this is probably one of the first decks I built when links came out. Didn't really know much about them, but I saw this archetype. I love the art style of it. I love the idea around it, so I'm like, I have to build into this, clearly. And when I did, it actually ended up being one of the better decks that I do run, because it does mess up a lot of other decks that are out there, just in the weird style that it does play in. And like I said, it's a lot of fun. I definitely recommend building into this deck. And if you have this deck, or play some form of this deck, let me know in the comments below, and let's have a friendly discussion about it. Let's not bash each other on why your deck build is better than this deck build. This game is just clearly for having fun, and let's keep it that way. But anyway, let's get into this build and the idea around how this deck is played. So basically, the idea of this deck revolves around the non-effect boss monster of this deck, Berserker of the Tenyi. Getting him out is pretty fairly easy with how this deck works. But like I said, it revolves around having a non-effect monster and being able to use the main deck monster's effects to your advantage. Now, each of the main deck Tenyi monsters all have an effect that if you control no effect monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. That includes if your field is empty, so turn 1 you can be able to special summon one of these cards from your hand right off the bat. However, all these cards also have a secondary effect, and their secondary effect is if a face-up non-effect monster is on the field, you're able to activate effect. For instance, this card is if you control a face-up non-effect monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, then target one of those destroyed monsters, special summon that, then you can destroy one monster your opponent controls. You can only use this effect once per turn, and all of the monsters pretty much have this effect that if you control a non-effect monster and something happens, you're able to activate this effect. For instance, like this one, when your opponent activates a card or effects that targets a non-effect monster you control, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, you get the activation, and if you do, destroy that card, and so on and so forth. And the other really cool thing about this archetype is that these cards can be activated from the hand or the graveyard. So if you need to, so don't worry about using them as summoning material, because once they're in the graveyard, they're still useful. And that's really good for this deck. I also run Mystery Shell Dragon because this is a non-effect worm monster for 2000 attack, which is really good to have in this deck, especially if you don't really have anything else. And this is also protected by all the Tenyi cards as well. As for the hand traps, I'm running Effect Veiler and Ash Blossom and Infinite Impertinence. As of right now, these are the only cards that I have. If you have more of these, definitely put more into the deck if you want to. Build the deck however you want to, but like I said, Effect Veiler is good to have in this deck because you can negate an effect that your opponent has, be able to stop your opponent from drawing cards or special summoning cards, and then obviously Infinite Impertinence is another negate the effect type of card as well. I'm also running Knight Draco Lich in this deck as well. While this is a effect worm monster, change all non-worm type attack position monsters that were special summoned from the main or extra deck to defense position. All non-worm type monsters that were special summoned from the main or extra deck lose defense equal to their original defense. So this card is kind of good to have when you go turn 2 and you have it in your hand and your opponent has monsters out that were special summoned from the main or extra deck. So this is kind of good to have with that as well. There is also a Synchro Tenyi card as well, which you use to summon with Tenyi Spirit Adara and then the 2 level 7 monsters. I'm currently not running that in this deck right now because I don't have it. If you want to run it, you can. It's a good card to have. I just personally don't need it because of all the other stuff that this deck can do. As for the magic and trap cards of this deck, there is the standard, run Regeki, run Mystical Space Typhoon. I also run Power of the Guardians, which just adds an extra layer of defense to my main deck monster. I also run Burial from the Different Dimension, which targets up to 3 banished monsters and returns them to the graveyard. The reason why I run this is because all of the Tenyi main deck monsters banish themselves to activate their effects, so if you want those cards back and you don't have a means to be able to return them, Burial from a Different Dimension is a good card to have. As for the trap cards, obviously I'm going to run Mirror Force because it's a good defense card, Drowning Mirror Force because it's able to shovel monsters back into the deck, so your opponent can't activate cards like, oh, if this destroys a monster, blah blah blah, this kind of just returns it. Then I also have Waterfall of the Dragon Souls, which is able to add one worm monster from your deck to your hand, or you can send any number of worm monsters from your hand or face up from the field to the graveyard and draw cards equal to the number of monsters sent to the graveyard +1. This is good to be able to, if you don't have any Tenyi cards in your hand, you'd be able to specifically select one, or if you have some in your hand and you think that you can draw into more, send it to this graveyard, draw in the more, because like I said, they work from the hand or the graveyard, which just adds more potential for you to be able to counter whatever your opponent tries to throw at you. And then, finally, I also love the trap card, Fist of the Unrivaled Tenyi. This is really good because when a spell, trap card, or monster effect is activated while you control a non-effect monster, negate the activation. This is good because it doesn't specifically target, it just stops your opponent from doing certain effects. But the other effect that I like of this card is if this set card you control is destroyed by your opponent's card effect, you can special summon one non-effect monster from your extra deck. This card is good because with this effect, you're able to effectively get out Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon for free. And I really love being able to play that, and then it messes up a lot of people because then they're like, oh shit, now there's a 4,500 attack monster out on the field. And because he's a non-effect monster as well, all the Tenyi cards work in tandem with him. This is technically your strongest monster in your deck, but it's not the easiest to get out because you have to pretty much bait your opponent into destroying this card. But that's why I run 2 of these and 3 of these, because like I said, I can get out the card that you need, but the first effect of this card is also good as well, as long as you control a face-up non-effect monster. As for the rest of the extra deck, obviously, you have to start off with Monk of the Tenyi, a non-effect Link 1, takes one non-link Tenyi monster, so obviously you special summon out a Tenyi monster, link into Monk of Tenyi, then you special summon or normal summon into another Tenyi card, then you link 2 into Shaman of the Tenyi, which just takes 2 worm monsters. Her effect is able to get out Berserker, where you discard 1 card, then target 1 worm monster in your graveyard, special summon it. Also, for the rest of the turn, you cannot activate the effects of monsters special summoned from the extra deck except Tenyi monsters, which is why I don't really run anything else besides Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, because this card affects the other effect Tenyi monsters that I have in the extra deck. And then when an attack is declared involving a face-up non-effect monster, you can target 1 card your opponent controls, destroy it. You can only use each effect of Shaman of Tenyi once per turn. This would be good if I was running Berserker with this card out on the field. However, that's not really needed because you kind of use Shaman of Tenyi to get out into Berserker, because Berserker takes 2+ monsters, including a Link monster. So normally, with Shaman of Tenyi, you bring back one of your main deck monsters, or you can bring back Monk, it doesn't really matter. And then you link 3 into Berserker and get your boss monster out on the field. There are 2 other extra deck monsters. There is Draco Masters of the Tenyi, which takes 2+ monsters, including a Link monster, cannot be destroyed by battle with an effect monster. If you control no other effect monsters, you can destroy effect monsters your opponent controls up to the number of non-effect monsters you control and or in your graveyard. You can only use this effect once per turn. This is kind of good to work as a extra layer of defense for a Berserker to have out on the field. And then there's also the Link 4 Tenyi card, Tenyi Spirit Shahashara, which takes 2+ worm monsters. It's a Link 4, so you're going to probably use Shaman and then 2 other cards, or you can use another Link 2 card as well. And while you control a face-up non-effect monsters, your opponent controls cannot target effect monsters for attacks. Also, your opponent cannot target effect monsters on the field with card effects. So this is kind of good to run in tandem with Berserker and the Draco Masters, because this kind of protects all of your cards as well, which is really good support for this deck. The only thing is that it's a Link 4, so it's kind of harder to get out, and the way that the Link arrows work on all the Tenyi cards really don't kind of add up, so you kind of have to play it a little bit. But it's still a fun card to run. This also has the effect, you can target 1 effect monster your opponent controls, special summon 1 Tenyi Spirit token. It's a worm, light, level 4, attack, defense 0. This token's attack becomes that targeted monster's original attack. You can only use this effect once per turn. So this is basically your card that you use to swarm the field with if your opponent has monsters and you want to try to go for game. It's also a 3000 attack monster, which is really good to have. And this is pretty much the deck build that I run. This deck is a lot of fun. If you run a version of Tenyi, let me know in the comments below. I will say, if you do have the Sky Striker Magic and trap cards, you can technically run those in this deck as well, because those revolve around having a monster in the extra monster zone. So if you just want to forego running Draco Masters of Tenyi and the Tenyi Spirit, Shashashara, Shushu, I'm gonna make fun of that name forever, and just run Berserker of Tenyi, you could technically run Sky Strikers with this deck. You could also run Mystic Mind as well, being able to not swarm the field as much as most other decks will, and being able to control a limited amount of stuff. But you're not really going to see much play with that compared to running this version of the deck or the Sky Strikers infused one. Like I said, I'm not running Sky Strikers in the deck because I just want to stick to one archetype for this deck build. But this deck is a lot of fun to play, and it definitely is different to play, but like I said, it's very interesting with how the effects work, and I really hope you guys build into this. Let me know if you do in the comments below. But now we're going to look at some duels where I pretty much make my opponents quit and or foil whatever plans that they have against this deck, and show you off what this deck can actually really do. And with that, that is the Tenyi deck build. What did you guys think? Are you going to build this deck in the future? Let me know, what you think in the comments below. Also, I just want to give you guys a very special announcement that this week, Ahoy Print is doing a Valentine's Day sale starting today all the way through to Valentine's Day. You get 20% off any item in the store, and this is not including the code. You just get 20% off. You could also use a code and probably use the code Krimson to get 30% off altogether, because my code is 10, their Valentine's Day thing is 20. So you might as well get a really good deal on something. Definitely go check that out. Anyway, guys, I'm going to see you all later. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and as always, good gaming. God bless, go beyond, and keep on keeping on. Yeah, let's just end this. I mean, the Necros stuff is pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. By looking at doing that, but my God, this deck just annoys me. Like, a part of me is like, I don't want to do this, but